Coming up on Network Africa, Malian forces confirm the killing of Abu Huzaifa, leader of Islamic State in West Africa. The bomb attack in northern Kenya kills 5 people as the cabinet meets as flawed death toll nears 170. Plus, counting underway in Togo's parliamentary election. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olaride. We begin in Mali, where security forces say they have killed Abu Huzaifa, a leader of Islamic State in West Africa, during a big operation in the north of Menaka. The authorities announced this on state TV on Monday after confirming Huzaifa's death on Sunday after the operation in the Indelimane area. The U.S. State Department's Rewards for Justice program had offered up to $5 million for information on Huzaifa. He's accused of being involved in an attack in Niger in 2017 that killed 8 U.S. and Nigerian soldiers. Groups connected to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have carried out many attacks in Mali, Niger, and nearby Burkina Faso over the last 10 years. According to the International Organization for Migration, over 3 million people in the region have been displaced by the ongoing security and humanitarian crisis. Now ballot counting in Togo's parliamentary vote is underway as the ruling Union for Republic Party is expected to win a majority of the 113 seats being contested in the National Assembly. Well, many critics believe this vote will cement the family dynasty of President Faure Asingbe in power. The party currently dominates parliament, having almost 65% of the seats. According to the National Independent Electoral Commission, the final results from the polls will be released within a week. Now, under a new charter adopted in March introducing a parliamentary system of government, the president will be elected by parliament instead of a usual universal suffrage. Details about the Assembly's election of the head of state remains unclear, although the new constitution, the parliament will appoint a position described as President of the Council of Ministers, who will have extensive authority to manage the coastal West African nation's government's affairs. We'll keep our eyes on the war in Sudan. The U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield to United Nations says he's warning that the city of El Fasher in Darfur is on the precipice of a large-scale massacre as Sudan's rapid support forces are, according to her, planning an imminent attack on the city. She was speaking alongside the UK Ambassador to UN, James Kariuki, to reporters in New York.
Today, the UN Security Council met to discuss the crisis in El Fasher, which is on the precipice of a large-scale massacre. As we speak, the RSF is planning an imminent attack on El Fasher. As I've said before, history is repeating itself in Darfur in the worst possible way. And an attack on El Fasher would be a disaster on top of a disaster. It would put 500,000 internally displaced persons at risk, people who traveled from across Darfur to seek refuge. And that's on top of the 2 million Sudanese who call El Fasher home. The RSF must end this siege and build up military forces in El Fasher and swear off any attack on the city. All parties to the conflict must take urgent steps to de-escalate.
The last thing that Sudan needs is a further escalation on top of this conflict that's been going on for a whole year. The Council is concerned about the humanitarian crisis. It's concerned about the scale of the famine risk, and it's concerned about the displacement of people. And we've heard in particular how troubling the problem of humanitarian access is, given the barriers imposed by both sides of the conflict on humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is gravely concerned by the escalating violence in and around El Fasher city. That's in North Darfur. Dozens of people have been killed in the past 2 weeks as hostilities between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces have intensified. UN Human Rights spokesperson Saif Magango says the High Commissioner is calling for an immediate de-escalation of the situation and an end to the conflict that has ravaged the country for more than a year now.
Civilians are trapped in the city, the only one in Darfur still in the hands of the SAF, afraid of being killed should they attempt to flee. This dire situation is compounded by a severe shortage of essential supplies, as deliveries of commercial goods and humanitarian aid have been heavily constrained by the fighting, and delivery trucks are unable to freely transit through RSF-controlled territory. The High Commissioner calls for an immediate de-escalation of this catastrophic situation, an end to the conflict that has ravaged the country for more than a year now, and investigation of all alleged violations and abuses of international human rights law and violations of international humanitarian law, with a view to ensuring accountability and victims' right to truth, justice, and reparations. He also urges both parties to the conflict and their allies to grant civilians safe passage to other areas, ensure the protection of civilians and civilian objects, and facilitate safe and unhindered humanitarian access. Thank you.
Well, over in Kenya, 5 people have been killed in a bomb attack in the northern region of the country. The Interior Ministry says the bomb exploded in Elwak town in Mandera County near the border with Somalia, wounding 5 other people. Now, more reports state that the bomb had been placed on a donkey cart to avoid detection. There is no claim of responsibility for the attack yet, but Somalia-based Al-Shabaab militants affiliated with Al-Qaeda have carried out attacks in the area. Earlier this month, gunmen suspected to be Al-Shabaab entered the El-Wak hospital and injured guards while asking about the whereabouts of doctors. Al-Shabaab often carries out cross-border attacks, especially in the remote Kenyan counties of Mandera and Garissa. And Kenya's President William Ruto has called for a special cabinet meeting to discuss the current flooding crisis in the country. About 169 people have been killed in floods that have devastated Kenya over the last month. Now, according to the government spokesperson Isaac Mawura, the death toll includes 45 people who died early on Monday after their villages were swept away near Mai Mahiu, about 60 kilometers from the capital Nairobi. However, the Kenya Red Cross says 50 were killed in this incident. Or 42 people, including 17 minors, have been recovered following the incident, while dozens are still missing as the worst peak of flooding occurred at night when locals were sleeping. The cabinet meeting is to discuss additional measures on flood mitigation, and with more rains expected, the government has delayed the opening of schools across the country. Well, joining us now is Mariama Diallo for more on this, the VOA's Nairobi Bureau Chief. Hello, Mariama. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, what more can you tell us about the bomb attack that happened in the northern region that unfortunately killed 5 people?
Yes, it took place, as you said earlier, in Mandera County. It exploded right there. It's an area that is usually have been prone to attacks from the Somalia group Al-Shabaab. But this time around, for sure, there have not been any claims of responsibility so far. The Interior Minister talked about the fact that the bomb was placed on a donkey cart, basically to smuggle it across the border. But again, no claims of responsibility, and I think investigations are still going on as to figure out who basically perpetrated this act. So far, again, we know that there has been previous attacks. I think last month, gunmen had stormed a hospital in that area. So it's in the Mandera area, in the Garissa area. And we know also that the Somali-based group, again, Al-Shabaab, has blamed the Kenyan forces for the longest time because of being part of that multinational force that's been trying to bring basically stability, to help bring stability in that Horn of Africa.
Indeed, and while this has happened, Kenya is battling, the flooding situation, and it's been quite overwhelming for the government, isn't it? What do we know of the cabinet meeting called by the president to address this?
Yes, the cabinet, they met today. Obviously, it's been a very rough 2 weeks, I would say, for all of us living in Kenya. Absolute tragedy with everything that's been happening, obviously. But I'm just going to read very quickly from some of the statement that came out of this meeting, saying that at the meeting, the cabinet received, obviously, and considered, the weather forecast as to what it's going to be in the next few days from the meteorological department, which has indicated that these ongoing rains will persist in intensity and duration, and had warned that the situation would actually get worse because the soils around the country are fully saturated. That's what they were briefed. The cabinet did note that the relevant government agencies have also, they say, completed the mapping out of all the fragile ecosystems around the country. They talk about the areas which pose basically grave danger to public safety and health in the likelihood of more precipitation, which obviously are predicted. But one more thing before I finish, coming out of this meeting, is that they directed all members of the public residing within the risky areas, they are required to move out within 48 hours. So they talk about areas that are near dams. So we know that of that accident, the dam accident that just happened. They also talk about people who live close to other water reservoirs, basically in public or private land, areas prone to mudslides and landslides. So they're asking people, those people who live in those areas, to kind of try to get into higher ground, to kind of move into other areas within 48 hours. Obviously, because of weather forecasts, that this is not about to slow down. It might get worse at this point.
Again, Mariam, and you've mentioned that, it's been a rough 2 weeks for many living in Kenya. How are citizens that are affected coping with this situation? And now they're expected to move within 48 hours, which is not enough time.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's basically everybody is in the state of shock. I think that is the first thing to think about, because a lot of people, if you've lived through floods before, when it comes, a lot of people have just lost everything. And it's not just materialistic stuff. It has to do with family members. People have lost families. People have been able to help rescue other people. But it's been just horrible when you are looking at the images. And I talked about the fact that it's not just people. People have lost businesses, have lost livestock, which is another a big thing that or have been affected by these floods. So I think really at this point, it's really the state of shock and trying to figure out what to do next. And given that the forecast is forecasting more rain, more floods, it's like I don't even know how do you cope at this point when it's just one day at a time and figuring out what the government is going to be doing to help people out, what other organizations like the Red Cross Society is doing. Yes, so at this point, that's what it is. But I think really everybody's ahead and is thinking about when is the next one going to hit, although we are dealing, they're dealing with the aftermath of the past 2 weeks.
Indeed, Mariama, we do hope for some respite for Kenya. Thank you so much, Mariama Diallo, the VOA's Nairobi Bureau Chief. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break now on the program. Still ahead. The Black Mambas of South Africa, an all-female anti-poaching unit, safeguards wildlife in the Limpopo province. Please stay with us for more details. Welcome back to the program. There's a medical trial in the Gambia suggesting that a vaccine patch could be a safe and effective alternative way to protecting young children against measles. Now, the device is the size of a stick-in plaster and is easier to transport and store than standard injections, especially in remote areas. Despite the existence of a very effective measles jab, falling vaccination levels since the COVID-19 pandemic have left millions of children unprotected, particularly in low and middle income countries. But now scientists hope this microneedle patch technology can put vaccinations back on track with 95% of children immunized. The microarray patch sticks to the arm and lots of microscopic needles deliver the vaccine through the skin with no pain. Now, measles is a very contagious disease which is common in children and can kill. Experts say protecting vulnerable children worldwide is the priority. And back here in Nigeria, the Vice President of African Development Bank, Beth Dunford, has paid a scheduled visit to Center for Dryland Agriculture, Bayero University, Kano. The visit is to partner with the Center on research to plant climate-adaptive varieties and soil testing to ensure that the right crops are planted in the phase of emerging climate change. The Vice-Chancellor of the University, Sagir Abbas, commended the AFDB for their support to the university, as the Director of CDA is optimistic that the collaboration will improve livelihood, innovation and entrepreneurship. Channels Television's correspondent Nanchin Vincent was there and brings us this report.
The African Development Bank has been collaborating with the Center for Dryland Agriculture at Bayero University, Kano, to address food security challenges in northern Nigeria through entrepreneurship and climate adaptation. This partnership aims to enhance livelihoods, resilience, and sustainable use of natural resources in African drylands by providing training and conducting demand-driven research. AFDB Vice President Beth Dunford dropped by the center recently as part of the ongoing support for interventions of emerging challenges as it affects adaptation of climate change. The first port of call was the Vice-Chancellor's office. After the pleasantries, the university management thanked the bank for helping the university enhance its research to provide solutions to climate adaptation.
Assisting the center of the university to become center for global adaptation to do with climate change and the rest of them. And secondly, he indicated that the bank is willing to assist the university with grants for facility development in the university. I think he mentioned something about $10 million, so he's willing to do that. And then he also mentioned that the bank is willing to assist the university in terms of development of agri-entrepreneurship.
She is then taken on a tour of the Center for Dryland Facilities. Since its inception in 2012, Center for Dryland has worked to improve livelihoods through sustainable use of natural resources in African drylands through training and demand-driven research.
It's not issue about grant, it's issue about facilitating us to serve the farmers. We work with various institutions and communities across the West and Central Africa region. In our immediate environment, we have 22 adapted communities that we are working with, but we also work across the dry lands of Nigeria and West and Central Africa.
Impressed with its track records of winning multiple grants, Dunford noted that agriculture needs to be transformed by using high-level science and technology, and the center shows it's ready for the next level.
President Akinwumi Adesina's visit to the university, he was very, very impressed, I think, with what he saw here and the potential and how it really helps to fuel, again, agriculture's ability in northern Nigeria to feed Africa and beyond. He asked me to come here directly to talk with the Vice Chancellor, to talk with the Director, to see how African Development Bank can support. So I'm going to take that back and work with my teams here that I brought with me today. I brought my Director for Agricultural Finance. I brought my Manager for Youth and Skills. And so I think we'll be coming together with our team here in Nigeria to see how we can best support this very, very impressive effort that we see here on the ground.
Climate change adaptation is the process of adjusting to the effects of climate change. This can be both current or expected impacts. Adaptation aims to moderate or avoid harm for people and is usually done alongside climate change mitigation. It also aims to exploit opportunities. Humans may also intervene to help adjustment for natural systems. From Kano Commercial City, Nanchin Vincent, Channels Television News.
A group of women known as the Black Mamba Anti-Poaching Unit are spearheading the fight against wildlife crime by emphasizing conservation and community involvement in South Africa. Their motivation for joining the Black Mamba stems from a deep concern about poaching and a genuine love for animals.
Women in formal uniforms drive a vehicle looking for evidence of poaching activities. On a mission to make poaching a thing of the past, they examine tire tracks on the ground and take photographs of clues.
The mission and vision of the Black Mambas is to make the Greater Kruger a hard place for poachers to poach and also engage with kids in the community via using knowledge and education.
They come upon some wires and animal skulls, which signify someone or persons set a trap for animals in that vicinity.
The daily challenge that we come across is when we found a snare with an animal that has been killed by a snare. It is so challenging because it's like we have lost an animal through wiring, and that made us to push more into removing the snares that we found in the bush.
Game Ranger Sergeant Malungani Naledi is convinced that there's so much more to do as an anti-poaching enthusiast in order to preserve wildlife for future generations.
For myself, when I was going to school on school trips, when we were visiting Kruger or maybe family trips, we never saw any a rhino. So I just told myself that one day I also want to be the hero or someone who saves these rhinos, because they were nearly extinct. Like now they are nearly extinct. I didn't want the future generation to only know about the rhino only on magazine, TVs, or newspapers.
Impressed with the notable decline in poaching incidents since the Black Mamba's formation, a local voices his optimism about the unit's ability to combat poaching.
I believe that poaching incidents will continue to drop. What is more exciting is that women are taking part in reducing this crime of poaching, which is male-dominated.
This all-female anti-poaching unit of 36 African women patrols 20,000 hectares in the Greater Kruger National Park, home to a significant rhino population. They prioritize removing wire snares used by poaching gangs and conduct conservation education in local schools through their Bush Babies outreach program.
And finally, on the program, 2 lions who were found half-nourished roaming the streets as cubs in Montenegro and Ukraine have been transferred to a sanctuary in South Africa. Over the weekend, the global animal welfare organization Four Paws transferred Nicola and Vasilina from the Netherlands, where they had been in a sanctuary since 2022, to the Lions Rock Sanctuary. Nicola had been found in Montenegro and Vasilina in Ukraine. Both had been privately owned. Both lions were found malnourished, dehydrated, and in dire need of veterinary assistance. With the support of local organizations and authorities, a team from Four Paws took both lions into care at the Felida Big Cat Sanctuary in the Netherlands, where they recovered and prepared for departure to South Africa. That's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.